Welcome to the OIS podcast, Eye on Innovation, and this episode is actually part of a new series we're starting here called Next Gen Innovators. And this is where we talk one-on-one with the next wave of clinicians and scientists working to bring innovations to market. If you're listening to this interview on audio and you want to put faces to the names, please join us on the OIS YouTube channel. So you can check out the video version of the podcast there. So today I'm talking with Dr. Vikram Shankar, a fellowship trained ophthalmologist at Stanford Healthcare Byers Eye Institute. Dr. Shankar's clinical focus is the medical and surgical care of cataracts and adult glaucoma, including premium lenses and minimally invasive glaucoma surgery. Dr. Shankar is also a dad to 3-month-old twins, but that is not the only startup he's working on. Dr. Shankar is co-founder of a seed-stage ophthalmic medical device startup that aims to improve patient safety and mitigate the environmental impact of eye care worldwide. The device is Dropmate, love the name, an affordable, easy-to-use, breakthrough disinfection system for eyedroppers, eye pressure tips, and exam lenses. I was introduced to Dr. Shankar by my dear friend Adrian Graves. I really loved meeting you and learning more about this fascinating technology that you've developed. So thank you for making the trip down to OIS from Stanford. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be the first as part of this new series. Let's kick it off in style.
Okay, that sounds great. So let's start off by just telling us, how you got into medicine and ophthalmology, what your journey has been like.
Absolutely. I grew up in India actually before I immigrated with my family back to the US when I was about 7 years old. And in India, the practice of medicine is very distinct from how it's practiced here. Doctors really have to take on a role of both public health servants and social workers just to overcome a lot of the structural barriers to care like poverty or poor health literacy. It's pretty inspiring, and really the person who embodied this the best in my own life was my uncle, who's a family physician in South India. Through his career, he took care of thousands of patients free of charge through his own practice, and then stepped beyond that by establishing a community and really a network of state-run free clinics that would deliver care to tens of thousands more patients. Really seeing the impact of his work, even when I was a young child, and then seeing my brother also follow in his footsteps and becoming a doctor, really convinced me that there was no better way for me to spend my life. So entering medical school, I love taking care of patients, but I found kind of a pull to do a little bit more and have a larger impact. For me, that took the form of taking a gap year during medical school to obtain a master's degree in public health. I spent some time abroad in countries like Haiti. I had my own experiences in India also to call back on. But I worked with NGOs and nonprofits, and I really learned about how these vehicles can help enact change on a larger scale. Intervening with public health is a difficult topic, and doing it on a population health level is even more challenging. I came away with these experiences feeling pretty convinced that I wanted to integrate both medicine and public health into my practice. And I always envisioned sort of doing this as an infectious disease specialist, but it wasn't till I went through my rotations in medical school that I sort of unexpectedly fell in love with operating and surgery. I thought initially about ENT and plastic surgery, but eventually it was ophthalmology that drew me in. And there were really several factors about ophthalmology, sort of challenges in different dimensions that convinced me it was the right fit. It was physically challenging. I mean, the dexterity and the precision that are required to do eye surgery, I knew it would take years to master. It was mentally challenging. As you know well, the field innovates and changes on a very rapid basis, and the diagnostics, the imaging studies, I knew that it would always keep me intellectually engaged. And maybe what set it apart was I also found it to be emotionally challenging. I think vision is precious for every patient that comes before me. And as a glaucoma specialist now, a lot of patients come to me with fear of losing their eyesight, and it's a tremendous responsibility and it's a privilege to help protect theirs. So I think this confluence of factors is really what drew me to ophthalmology. Once I made my decision as a senior med student, I really have never looked back. And I feel incredibly lucky to be in this position now where I'm taking care of patients I did my residency training at Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia, and then came out to Stanford for my glaucoma fellowship to train under Kuldev Singh and Rob Chang and Jeff Goldberg. And it's been great. I just graduated last year, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So tell us, what inspired you to develop Dropmate?
Absolutely. I think when Sean Yanchlev and I co-founded Dropmate, our focus was primarily on patient safety. I was a resident during the entirety of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the pandemic changed everything. We all know this. The world changed, ophthalmology changed, and patients and their expectations also changed. When lockdowns ended and patients came back to our clinics, they really expected a higher standard from us. We were wearing masks, we were using slit lamp shields, we were wiping down all of our contact surfaces with Clorox. And some of this was sort of a production, almost like a hygiene theater in front of the patient, but there were very real benefits to this. The renewed focus on disinfection that the pandemic brought prompted a lot of large institutions to switch to single-use disposable devices in another effort to mitigate risk. But I thought it was curious that there was one device that seemed to escape all of this scrutiny, which was the century-old eyedropper bottle. Now, these bottles are shared among 100 or more patients over days to weeks in our ophthalmology clinics. They're handled by multiple users. It's common to contaminate them accidentally when administering a drop to a patient. Sometimes patients blink or they move when they're getting a drop in their eye. This contamination, basically the bacteria from a prior patient can then be passed onto a drop that's given to the next patient. There's good studies that show that a quarter or maybe even up to half of all eyedropper bottles used in the clinical setting are contaminated within 2 weeks of use. And I found this to be concerning. Fundamentally, the eye, the conjunctiva, is mucosal tissue. It's similar to our nasal and our oral passageways, and we don't reuse tongue depressors or otoscopes or endoscopes without disinfecting them first. But we do that with eyedropper bottles. So fundamentally, I thought this was a public health issue. I thought it was a gap in our standard of care. And given my public health background, it was hard not to be concerned about the 110 million plus exposures that occur each year just as part of routine dilated eye exams. And that's really what motivated Sean and I to start this company.
So tell me more about the clinical challenges that you're trying to address with Dropmate.
Absolutely. Like I said, the focus at the very outset was on patient safety. As we developed our product, we realized that we actually solved likely about 3 challenges in eye care. The first obviously was contamination, but really we also solved a cost problem and a waste problem. I'll start by focusing on eyedropper bottles. That was really our intention at the beginning. Today, when you go to an eye clinic, if an eyedropper bottle is accidentally contaminated, the only solution is to throw it out. There's no methods of disinfection. Some institutions, like Stanford, for example, take this even further, and they impose these 28-day expiration dates on eyedropper bottles, where even if there's no evidence of contamination, they toss the bottles out, even if there's residual medication left in the bottle. ASCs take this even another step further, and some ASCs discard an eyedropper bottle after use on a single patient, for example, a pre-op anesthetic or a dilating drop. This creates a ton of medication waste. It's a ton of cost to the healthcare system. And it's carbon emissions, things that are all preventable. We believe we've developed the first solution that can disinfect safely these eyedropper bottles and enable reuse in a clinical setting. Second challenge was with all these other devices that we use in our eye clinics. If we talk about pressure check devices, for example, applanation tips or eye care tonometer probes, lenses that contact the eye like gonio lenses or anterior segment laser lenses, typically what we do is we disinfect these devices using chemical methods like soaking them for 10 to 15 minutes in bleach or Clorox or Sidex. Now, these chemical disinfectants are time-consuming to do, they're labor-intensive. The chemicals themselves actually cause wear and tear on our equipment. They usually cause swelling and cracks in the tonometer tips. These cracks can themselves harbor pathogens, or it can scratch the surface of the eye during an exam. These chemicals need to be safely handled and disposed of. And we just found that this was such a time-consuming and laborious process that many practices chose not to do it. Doctors fundamentally vote with their feet, and there's this outstanding survey that the American Glaucoma Society and the American Optometric Association did. where they basically showed that less than 10% of doctors actually use these gold standard disinfection methods. Dropmate basically allows these practices to maintain this high level disinfection standards in a fraction of the time and with minimal labor. And so these are really the main problems that we're addressing. It's cost, it's contamination, and it's waste.
So I see that you have brought a prototype with you today. So let's get it out and see how it works.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited to show this. Really, this is a device that we created just over the past year. As you can see, it's really about the size of a hardcover book. It's very light, it can be transported anywhere. This device basically uses a proprietary form of germicidal irradiation to enable rapid disinfection and reuse of equipment immediately at the point of care. So I'll show you here. The device can be opened actually with one hand. It's that easy. And any number of pieces of clinical eye equipment, so I'll use an eyedropper bottle here as an example, can be placed inside. Eyedropper bottles can be placed inside without any sort of pre-cleaning with the cap off. For other devices that contact the surface of the eye, like gonioscopy lenses, if there's goniosol or patient tears or mucus that are on it, we do recommend the user just wipes those with a moist cloth or an alcohol swab, but they just place it inside the chamber, just on a shelf, and that's pretty much the entire process. The user shuts the lid, the disinfection cycle begins automatically. As you can see, actually the radiation sources inside have already turned on. They're safely sealed and contained within the device. We've already done our quality testing to ensure that. And in about 5 minutes, there will be a status indicator that glows green that allows the user to know that the devices inside are safe for reuse on the next patient. We fundamentally feel that what makes this device unique is that we can disinfect all clinical eye care equipment, eyedropper bottles, eye care tonometer probes, applanation tips, gonioscopy lenses, anterior segment laser lenses, and even other equipment like scleral depressors, eyelid specula, jeweler's forceps, things that are used for minor procedures in the clinical setting. This is really a groundbreaking device that reduces the disinfection time to almost nothing. It reduces labor to almost nothing. And we feel that compared to standard disinfection methods today, it's safer, it's more efficient, it's more cost effective, and it's more sustainable.
So for those of you who are just listening on the podcast and can't see it, it really is a very, very small footprint. Do you envision one of these being in every single exam lane?
That's exactly right. This device is small enough to fit on a countertop. You can sit it flush against the back wall of any office lane. We actually can mount this on the wall as well if users want to save even more counter space. As we have it now, the device is plugged into direct current power, and we can make a battery-powered version. We think there's a very compelling use case for this to be used on international mission trips. We can enable low-resource settings to safely administer care and check pressure in ways that they really have never been able to do before. We believe that we can make this form factor even smaller. We think there's a compelling use case even for consumers at home who are on chronic eye drops. And we've designed, as part of our intellectual portfolio, a device that's about the size of a tube of lipstick that can be used for patients that need to disinfect their drops at home.
Oh, I love that. So you could even put that in your purse if you're traveling. That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So tell us more about the cost savings that you believe will go along with adopting Dropmate as just a standard of care.
Absolutely. I alluded to this a little bit before in my prior answer, but I'd love to dive into the details and provide a bit of color. In general, there was a multi-society position paper that came out just a few years ago that talked about the medication waste that we have in ophthalmology. Researchers from Mount Sinai discovered that when an eye drop bottle is thrown out, it still contains about 70% of the medication that it was originally filled with. These researchers estimated that for ASCs, they waste about $200,000 a year, a single ASC, in just medication. And a normal eye clinic wastes about $30,000 a year, or about $1,300 per office lane in just medication. We essentially eliminate this practice. We can enable both ASCs and clinics to extend the use of their eyedropper bottles until the drop is empty or until the stated manufacturer expiration dates, which are usually years in advance. And we can also just eliminate these arbitrary 28-day expiration dates that infection control programs and a lot of these large institutions have adopted. Now, that's just for eyedropper bottles, and reducing just medication waste, as far as the sustainability standpoint, would save about 150 to 200 kilograms of plastic waste per institution per year. It would save roughly 100,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere, again, per institution per year. These are significant savings. Now, to move on to some of the single-use disposable devices for institutions that are forced to use these devices because they're concerned about infection control, they can't use the time investment of disinfecting with these chemical disinfection methods. There's researchers from Boston University and Columbia that have looked into this, and these institutions spend about $120,000 a year just on applanation tips and gonioscopy lenses. So we can basically eliminate those costs entirely. That would be hundreds of kilograms more of plastic waste, again, that's saved from landfills. So if we kind of summarize this, an institution that has ASCs or an HOPD surgical department and a clinic would anticipate saving up to $250,000 a year by switching to this solution, save a ton of plastic waste that goes to landfills, gets broken down into microplastics, and then comes back into our bodies eventually. We think these are the main ways we address those two problems.
So that's a natural segue to telling us more about your collaboration with iSustain and the ASCRS Foundation.
I would love to. We really feel that the mission of our organization aligns very clearly with the goals of iSustain and the ASCRS Foundation. iSustain, for listeners who may not be aware, is really an international coalition of organizations that are committed to promoting sustainability in ophthalmology. They're actually sponsored by the American Academy of Ophthalmology, ASCRS, and ESCRS, and I think they have 60 to 70 member societies worldwide. What they do is they provide leadership, education, advocacy, and research that supports and promotes sustainable solutions in ophthalmology. We felt that there was tremendous overlap basically between what we're developing and what they're trying to champion. As we know, climate health affects human health and ocular health. To just give you a few examples of numbers, the healthcare industry causes about 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. It's the second largest contributor to landfills in the United States. And even more sobering number, in just a year of the pandemic between 2020 and 2021, the pandemic alone accounted for 8 million tons of extra plastic waste that entered landfills. So we know this makes an impact on all of us. As far as eye health, as the climate continues to change, we're going to see a greater incidence of things like allergic conjunctivitis, cataracts, pterygia, ocular surface disease, eyelid cancers. These are things that affect our patients and eventually will affect us as well. So we had a chance to present our technology to iSustain just a few months ago, and I think they took quite readily to it because it sort of makes their sustainable solutions easier to adopt for a lot of doctors. They've really provided a platform for us to disseminate our message to other ophthalmologists. They also, specifically Drs. David Chang and Barb Ernie, who helped found iSustain and are also integral members of ASCRS, they introduced us to the ASCRS Foundation, and we're very happy to say that they actually served as the lead investors of our seed round that we closed this year. And so, this has been an outstanding partnership already. The ASCRS Foundation, really their goal is to promote the humanitarian mission of delivering eye care safely and sustainably worldwide. And so I kind of compare an innovation or a product to an organism. It's a living thing. It needs some water from below. Those are kind of Dr. Yanchelev's and my own efforts in disseminating it to other ophthalmologists, doing our clinical studies, providing the data. That's the water from below, but it also needs some sunshine from above. That's the support from ophthalmic societies, from key opinion leaders like David Chang and Barb Ernie. And I think both of those things are what will allow this product to thrive.
Wow, so with backing from Dr. Anshalev and the collaborations with iSustain and the ASCRS Foundation, that's certainly an amazing foundation to set you on the path to success. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
So tell us about the milestones you've achieved already and what you're looking forward to in 2025.
Absolutely. 2024 has been a great year for Dropmate. My life as well with the twins, as you alluded to. This year alone, we created and completed product development for this device. As you can see, actually, the disinfection cycle is done, so it's now glowing green to let us know that it's completed. We completed product development. We filed our IP for this product. We completed our preclinical feasibility testing. We validated our method of disinfection. We've built out really our launch team for productization and commercialization in 2025. We've completed our medical advisory board with Drs. David Chang, Barb Ernie, Adrian Graves, and Alan Robin. These are people that are well known to the OIS community. They're leaders in our field. And we think we have a great team around us to try and commercialize this product in 2025. There's still a lot of work to do, and we're looking forward to 2025. Really in the first part of the year, we're completing our pilot studies where we've enrolled 5 clinical sites that'll be using this device, and they'll be sending us our data for its disinfection efficacy. We'll be using that for our eventual publications. We're also going to be registering with the FDA as a Class 1 medical device. We'll complete FCC certification. We're going to set up manufacturing and tooling with our contract manufacturing partner based in Hong Kong. So there's a lot of positive things ahead for our company. By the end of 2025, our goal is to have a really good foothold in about 2,000 exam lanes in the United States. And we really will anticipate using that as a launching pad for even more or even greater growth in 2026.
Sounds like you have a lot of work ahead of you at 2025.
Yes, indeed.
But a lot of fun. So my last question for you,
Sure.
What advice do you have for other clinicians who have ideas for innovations like this and how to sort of bring it to fruition like you've done?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I would say to anyone interested in a path like this is absolutely go for it. It's fulfilling, it's been a ton of fun, but it's also a lot of hard work. So you should definitely make sure you've got some sort of inner fire in your belly that's going to keep you fueled. As a clinician, I've been working on this mostly on evenings and weekends, so it also requires a lot of support from your family to kind of give you the allowance to work on something that you're passionate about. But as far as real practical advice, I think the main thing I would encourage others to do is to not do it alone. Seek out mentorship, seek out support, and you'll often find it in unexpected places. For me personally, I feel like I had a lightning strike of good fortune in meeting Sean Yanchlev for the first time. Introducing this idea to him, he immediately provided support. He actually provided the initial funding for us to develop our IP. He's provided mentorship through the product development pathway, connected me with regulatory experts so that I can kind of plot the course for our product. And Sean's well known to the OIS community. He's a brilliant serial entrepreneur. He's really changed the face of and the standard of eye care with products like Lucentis and Aura and MyLoop and now with Eontrek. And I would encourage others to seek out and find your own mentors because there are a lot of first-time mistakes that new founders make, and building a coherent team around you of true professionals who have done it before and can help you avoid the common pitfalls of developing a product, to me, that's the greatest benefit you can do for your own company. As far as other advice, not to make it too much like an Ezra Klein interview, but he always asks, what are 3 books that you would recommend? For me, 3 books that I think have helped me along this pathway. One is The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, and the third is The Startup Owner's Manual by Bob Dorff and Steve Blank. I think these books kind of gave me a crash course in how to build a successful company, and while we're not there yet, I think we certainly are anticipating being there by next year.
Awesome, love that advice. So thank you again for joining us. We're all going to be rooting for you here at OAS. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in to this episode of Ion Innovation. That was fantastic, super exciting. Really look forward to following your journey along the way. Subscribe to the OAS podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or watch the video version. That's the only place you're going to actually be able to see the Dropmate prototype, is by checking out the YouTube channel. I'm your host, Carrie Powers. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.